Hello everyone, my name is Leah Kopke and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. This is my 3D modeling podcast, Ambient 3D Animations, where we cover new 3D modeling tools, all their settings, and also work on projects to practice using them. I'm very excited to say that today's episode is the 100th episode I've made, and I've made 100 episodes in 100 weeks. So that is really exciting for me. And I really appreciate all of you being here and 3D modeling with me. It's much more fun than 3D modeling by myself. In today's episode, we are continuing to work on the hand sculpture we started for the library. We have, in past episodes, 3D modeled the hand using sculpting brushes and mesh modeling tools covered previously. Then we used Bake Sculpt to create displacement in normal maps for the hand. Next, we had created joints for this hand, weighted it, added controls so that we can reposition the hand. This will allow us to make multiple sculptures from this because we want to use this not only for a large sculpture within the library, we want to use this for a bookend, which will be very fun. And you can see the sketch I have here of what I'm trying to portray in this project. The idea is that we are covering 3D modeling tools in here, and learning inspires what you do and how you take action. So that's the metaphor here with the library and the hand. Knowledge leads the hand. So let's go ahead and jump into Cinema 4D and get started. Here is our hand we've started. We have all the controls in here, all the joints we created. I'm going to turn off the subdivision surface for right now and turn on lines so that I can see a little bit more clearly what's happening. And once we've done that, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this holding Control and using the hotkey E for move, and then moving this over here. So once I'm in move with E, holding Control, pulling that arrow, and now we have two hands. This first one is going to be for the book end, so I'll name it accordingly. And this one is going to be for the sculpture that's large. I feel like a book end is a sculpture though, to a certain degree. So now that we have two hands in the scene, I'm going to go ahead and adjust this first one since it'll be a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to angle this up. I'm going to grab this control here, angle it some more. This is the main positioning I'd like for the hand. So the next step that I'd like to do is drop in a cube. I'm going to adjust the dimensions to something like 6 by 1 by 6. I may increase this just a little bit. And now that I've done that, I can hit the C hotkey to make it editable. That's the same as this one down here. Now that we've done that, I'll go into polygon mode. I'll use MT for extrude. And I'll extrude this about 1 inch. And then this I'll extrude about 10 inches. And that gives me actually a pretty good idea of the size I'd like this to be. So from there, I can go ahead and scale this down. And in order to scale down a rigged object, we want to change from model mode to object mode. So I'll hold a click on here and change modes. Use the T hotkey, scale this down. And I'll move this forward just a little bit. So now in a way it'll become easier to actually position the hands. Because we've gone through the process of adding in this here. I can add in a couple subdivisions just so that we're seeing a more realistic end form for the hand. I'm okay with these intersecting just a little bit. I'm going to use normal move, which is MZ. That's one of the first tools we've covered. And with that, I can go ahead and just move this down a little bit and adjust it. I may do the same with this. Maybe I'll even try new transform so that they're both equal in thickness. And I can move this hand in. I'm going to turn on the coordinate system so that when I move this, I'm moving it directly this way and not any other. And the axis aligns with the world coordinate system. So now you may be noticing that this hand is going through here, and I'm not too concerned about that at this point because it's pretty easy to fix. The first thing that I need to do is actually make an editable version of this. So I'll right click on our hand and choose current state to object. It'll make a copy of this hand, just like that. And then we can grab this cube, and in model mode, I'll move these both over. When we baked this, the initial hand was mostly for the purpose of positioning it. And this hand, the second hand, we don't really need it to have the joints or anything like that. We just want it to hold its form. So something to consider, and I'm actually going to undo this and put it back, because we've made a copy of everything, including the joints. The only thing we really need to make a copy of is this right here, is the mesh. So I'm going to say current state to object. And this time, we should only get a duplicate of the mesh. Like that. And now we can grab another subdivision surface. And if we want to save ourselves time, we can even copy and paste this one so that we can reuse the subdivision surface settings we had before. And we can use this for the hand. And now I can grab this and move this on over and line it up. The first hand, this one, I'll name original. And once we have that, I can go ahead and just hide it really. And we can turn off the subdivision surface. It looks like I accidentally made 2 copies. We only need 1 copy. So you can see that's our original. And this is our final version. We can name this book and L. And I'll put this in here. And then that will go ahead and hide along with everything else. And then I'll name this one book and L. But I'll put it in here. I'm going to move this texture just to the hand because we don't need it on this part as well. It'll update again. That looks much better. So now you can see we have our hand. It kept its form of before, and we also have this bracket here. If you want to try out some different materials, you for sure can. There's a bunch of cool materials in here. And the Asset Manager, if we go under materials, we can go ahead and look for gold, and we can try out a gold texture on here, or even brass. Maybe brass would look cool. So we should see this update in a moment. I like to add bevels to everything I work on, so I'm going to go ahead and grab a bevel deformer from here. I'll drop this under the L, and I'll give this bevel an offset of something very small, like 0.1. And that should make it look a little bit better. Then we'll have this really cool reflection of the hand on the metal. If we add additional subdivisions, that bevel will become a little bit more rounded, which will look nice. I'm going to go ahead and save this here. If you want to try getting a little bit more creative with this, what we can do is we can rename this and make some adjustments to it so that it works with our hand. I'll name this brass L for book end. And then I'll make a copy of this. Command C, Command V. And now we have a copy. I'm going to rename this one hand book end. I'll name this brass as well. And we can try some things out and see how this looks. I'm going to stop the IPR here for a second and save. Now that I've done that, I'm going to open up this texture. I need to copy our bump map, and I need to add it into here. Okay, there we go. And now we can just add the output to the bump map, and that should be good to go. The next part is we are going to need our displacement map we made from our other texture. So I'm going to collect all these, copy them, and then I'll paste them in here. So sometimes the materials in here for Redshift are a really great way to create yourself a base to work off of, because most of the work is done in terms of creating the material, and it saves you some time. All you need to do is add in the displacement and the normal map. And we can go ahead and try adding this to here instead. I'm going to remove these and see how this looks. I'm going to go ahead and save. So this is very cool looking. I'm thinking that it just blends in a little bit too much to this, so I want to have a little bit of a different texture. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this material and see what we have in here. I'm going to increase the roughness. I kind of like how these contrast a little bit more. And one is rougher of a brass material than the other. This is looking pretty cool, actually. This is still going through here, so we'll go ahead and fix that. I'm going to turn off the subdivision surface here for a moment. What we need to do is slice off the bottom of this so that we can use this for a bookend. So in that case, I'd like to be able to reuse the topology as much as I can. So I'm just going to go ahead and use UL. I'm going to select these loops here. I can even use UF to select the remaining loops, holding Shift, and I'm going to delete this. I'm going to rotate this around using R and just move it up here. And then I'm going to scale it up a little bit just so that it spreads out. And use MD in order to close that hole. Now we can test this and see how it looks when we render it, because whenever you're cutting up a texture like that, it can look a little bit funny sometimes. So let's just double check it and make sure that it looks okay. Along the edges, so that looks all right. I think this hand looks pretty nice. This will definitely work for a library. Something that I forgot to check this with is actually with the subdivision surface on, so I'm going to double check that right now. So the displacement map looks pretty nice. The one thing that I am not loving is the bottom of this hand, but we can fix that by adding in another loop. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to use the hotkey ML, and in edge mode, I'm going to add in another loop here at the bottom. Maybe a few. And let's try rendering it again. It should hold its form a little bit better. So there we go. That looks much better with the displacement on. I'm so happy with this. This was definitely a challenging project to take on. And I had a vision in my head for how it would go and how I wanted it to go. But you never really know what's going to happen when you're in the middle of a project. It's a lot of problem solving, and sometimes things turn out a little bit differently than what you imagine them going in your head. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. Really, really happy. So this is a good note for the 100th episode, actually, to have this land on such a good point in a project. Our next hand over here is this one. We actually have quite a bit more work left to do in this project when I really take some time to think about it, though. But let's just go ahead and start positioning this. I have that sketch I had done that I can use as a reference. I did actually position this hand, if you remember, to test it in the position for the larger sculpture. After I had positioned this previously for the last episode, my computer had crashed, so I'll need to redo it again here. But this is the sketch. and I had made this in Sketchbook. It's a pretty nice app to sketch in. Photoshop works as well, so does just some paper. I'm going to use this as a reference though for while I'm 3D modeling, to make sure that I get these angles right. And I'm probably not going to cut off the bottom of this one, just because I want to give myself the option later of adjusting this and its shape for the bookcase. So my goal right now is to just roughly get this positioned in place. Once we have that and have the bookcase done, I can detail this one out a little bit more in terms of how it looks. I think we're at a pretty good stopping point for today in this project. We'll need to 3D model the bookcase and 3D model some books, and that'll give us a better idea of how we're going to position that larger sculpture hand. We'll scale it up for the room. I feel really proud of this. I'm happy that we have this really beautiful bookend. I'm really liking this brass texture too. I had a lot of fun doing this with all of you, and it really means a lot to me that you guys join in here and 3D model with me. It's a lot more fun with this podcast. So I really appreciate you following along. Thank you so much. If you'd like to help support my channel, you can leave me a tip on Ko-fi. There's a QR code at the end. Please hit like and subscribe. If you want to be notified of the next episode, remember to hit the bell. And thank you so much for 3D modeling with me. I hope to see you here next time on Ambient 3D Animations.